Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about where the U.S. is going and if it will exist in 5 years at all. And yeah, so we're going to talk about the future. I mean, obviously, I'm a science fiction author, so I have to think about it a lot. And Obviously, the election is coming up. Um, Also, this is also a screenshot from Neofeud 2 because I'm like on the very last scene of Neofeud 2. The very last, and it's actually after the game is done. I'm wrapping up the ending, the very last scene of the ending. So that just a update on the game's run in case you're wondering how things are going. Um, and Yeah, I've been as I'm finishing the game, I was also thinking a lot about like what what comes after the action, the bulk of the drama and the conflict and the struggle. I've been thinking a lot about that because as I'm trying to wrap the game up, I'm also wrapping up 7 years of working on 7 years. Oh my god, working on this game. It's actually like almost 3 times as long I've spent on Neofeud 2 than Neofeud 1. It's kind of weird to think about that. Um, that's been a whole process. I guess I gotta do a dev diary commentary thing later on. Um, maybe another video. But sorry, my chat computer is a little bit behind. But yeah, I wanted to kind of think about this out loud on the YouTube channel, and also kind of break that down a little bit. What I mean by where is the U.S. headed? I was thinking about what to title this for a while. Should I title this "Where is the so-called U.S. headed"? Where is the air quotes U.S. headed? Is there a future of the United States? I mean, it's a very complicated. I mean, I think a lot of people don't really know. I mean, nobody really knows the future, except for John Connor, and John Connor and Doctor Who, Bill and Ted, um, Cloud. What's that? The protagonist from Chrono Trigger. Uh, Nobody really knows the future. Um, but and we can't obviously completely plan for exactly what will happen. There's many preppers, obviously, of various kinds that are preparing for uh, future scenarios of the United States, getting water, food, ammunition, underground, multi-million dollar hyper secure supposedly bunkers, securing their community, building local connections, international connections. People are allocating finances, not putting all their eggs in one basket, putting their eggs in like 5 baskets, maybe like a basket of currencies, like an international BRICS payment system and new financial superstructures. People are physically like leaving, as we've talked about on many of these streams, physically leaving places that are falling apart or seem like they're going to fall apart. People are leaving places that are falling apart. People are leaving areas that were, let's say, prone to climate disaster, like tornadoes, pyronados, Category 7, hurricane pyronados. A hurricane literally spawned record numbers of tornadoes in the last 2 weeks in Florida. People are leaving those areas to go to places like Asheville, North Carolina, which was then hit with an unprecedented, never before in history, never seen in recorded history anyway, catastrophic disaster that is basically apparently wiped out an entire region of the U.S. Um, the size of Germany, and some places completely just gone, right? And so that's another question, which is that like you can head, you can move, but then can you really escape, right? Can you really escape the the reaping of the seeds that you have sown? You know, can you really escape the penance for your sins? You just by moving to, because it's actually Asheville, North Carolina was deemed by many experts to be one of the safest places that it's away from Tornado Alley. It's away from, not hit by hurricanes. It's like elevated. It's away from like some kind of mega tsunami event. It's not in. It's not near any super important American city that could be nuclear hit with nuclear weapons. Right. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. But no, it's not safe. What people discovered, unfortunately, that is not that you cannot escape, um, you cannot escape climate, or you cannot be guaranteed that you will escape climate disasters, economic disaster, war, violence, poverty, financial dislocation, collapse. Um, as we talked about previously, right? If you have a phone, you have a bomb on you. If you have an American or Western phone, U.S. vassal phone like Motorola, if you got Samsung, you got Apple, you have a bomb on you. It's a spy device and a bomb, so you can't escape that. If you have a Western phone, laptop, tech, refrigerator, so you can't. There's nowhere that you can head to get away from that. Well, I take that back. There's nowhere that you can head in the West that you can get away from that. But this is about where is the U.S. and obviously when we talk about the U.S., it's talking about the allied countries with it to an extent. I should not allies, the subordinated so-called free world, let's say. And so yeah, but it's interesting question. I see a lot of people talking about that. Like I saw somebody post like I think it was Bree Newsom, which I forget. Yeah, she's like a black activist somewhere in the or I can't remember exactly. I think she might have been like a activist, like a lawyer to help. If I think I might be mixing people up actually, but she was like, "Looks like it's falling apart. How do we survive? Does anybody know what do we need to do to survive collapse of empire?" And I was like, a lot of people, many people are saying all different kinds of things. And yeah, to a large extent, it's like you can't really know ultimately. Um, Obviously, with this image, I'm suggesting that the United States is it's suggesting that what is called North America, what is called the United States, what is called Canada, and that region, Central and South America is a little bit more. It's a little bit more complicated because of historical reasons. But you know, I'm obviously suggesting that there is a positive future. I mean, there is a positive ending. Well, not ending, but future destination, future reality, that future a future direction, and a future this is where it gets complicated because right, it's kind of like what does that even mean? What does the U.S. even mean? The United States, well, like countries. Am I talking about the country? Am I talking about like the U.S. Western liberal capitalist democratic system? Am I talking about like the American identity? Like which Americans? Like like in the Alex Garland Civil War, what kind of American are you? Well, Americans are only these kinds of people, right? And that's another problem, which is that the United States is a fragmented, fractured mind. It's a basket case. It's a case of it is a basket of head cases. It doesn't know who it is, right? The United States, as I pointed out in previous videos, half of the United States believes that Donald Trump is the president still. The other half believes that Biden is the president. And the United States, nobody agrees on that, And this is actually, that is not weird. Actually, that's actually the historical norm. Try to find that. Where's that one? Who's the president? Oh yeah. Well, here's the Civil War movie one. I did a video. This talks about who is the president. Does the United States, in what sense does the United States exist at this point, right? Because we know that like there has been 4 years of, well, there's really been more than 4 years, but at least 4 years of Americans, like Democrats and Republicans, basically like not recognizing, certainly like a lot of the population. I mean, I know the government works together for its own personal corrupt DC salaries, but the United States has been at civil war. Like Donald Trump tried to stay in country. He did not agree. He did not accept the results of the election. There wasn't really a peaceful transition of power. It kind of had to be forced, and there was already a military. There was a military. Donald Trump in 2020 basically ordered the U.S. military to fire on Black Lives Matter protesters, and the U.S. military had to basically had to resist him. With a coalition of like Democrats, certain again, the U.S. is a basket case with like certain elements of the business, tech, more liberal billionaire and corporate interests. They're like, we don't want the United States to collapse right now, or we don't want because there are elements of the United States that are like, America needs to be quote unquote cleansed and rid of the swamp. There's a conservative Republican edge of the spectrum. They were like, in America, they tend to be the more America is for the white populations, right? And we need to cleanse it of the scourge of this Black Lives Matter, terrorism, right? And so that split between like progressive, liberal, something, and the conservative America has not been fixed, right? Most of the liberals they're trying to basically put Donald Trump in. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is a good character. I'm just saying that this is a disagreement in the United States, right? So the United States can't agree who the president is now. The United States citizens don't approve of the president or the Congress. They're all like less than way like 30% or less approval ratings, right? So the United States doesn't, but that's actually the norm for Western governments, right? So these things are they've, in one sense, they've always been directionless, chaotic confluences of the most, just moneyed interest, corporations, military industrial complex, all the usual suspects, pharmaceuticals, big tech, big ag, fossil fuel, with this papering over of voting, that statistically is irrelevant, according to a Princeton study that proved that democracy is irrelevant. So in that sense, like where the U.S. is headed, it doesn't matter what the American in that sense, it doesn't matter what the American people think, because American people, like all Western countries, the masses don't guide anything. They don't decide the direction of anything, right? They follow where the wealthy, the imperial directors, the military industrial complex, which is they're just the trigger pulling arm of the billionaire, colonialist, etc. classes, profit seeking, the banking classes. So in that sense, we shouldn't. It doesn't really matter what Americans think. It doesn't matter what the 99% of Americans or Europeans or Canadians want to go. It's irrelevant because they don't control anything. It's like, where is the ruling class taking the United States? In that sense, you have some of the United States that's like, we should have war with Iran, China, Russia. Let's have war in Europe, war in the Middle East, war in Asia, all at the same time. And then there's some of the U.S. that's kind of like, well, let's not have too much war. Let's maybe have one war, right? And that's kind of more, the Trump is Trump, not Trump himself, but like Trumpian elements. Say like the more not completely unhinged right wing of the U.S. is kind of like, let's not have the Ukraine war. Let's focus on China, right? So that's a good chunk of the actual people who decide the United States' direction. So, but I mean, and obviously, I'm not saying the U.S., America, I'm not saying the people of the U.S. and the collective Western countries have no impact on what happens. But at a governmental level, at a business level, they should have more impact, right? But they statistically do not. One question is like, is the U.S. headed into a direction where there is not, where the feelings and the will and the needs and the interests of the 99% of the majority of the population is taken into account? Like, is the West headed towards democracy? Like, there's that organization, right? Democracy in Europe, the DM25, started by Yanis Varoufakis, is a Greek, right? So Yanis Varoufakis, Greece has already gone through this process, like Italy, or Italy is just the descendants of the Roman Empire. And the U.S. is as an empire, right? The Italians have this in their history, as the not they're not, we shouldn't call them this. They're not necessarily Rome. Oh, Rome does still exist, but they're not identified as Romans. But as the Italians, as those who emerged from the Roman legacy, right, and the collapse of that empire, a capitalist, imperialist, hyper-militarized, genocidal empire. The Romans, at the end, had multiple Caesars at the same time. One Caesar would declare himself huge, a lot of the population and the oligarchs would kind of go towards it. Rome was like America, where it was mostly irrelevant what the Roman people thought. They just threw bread and circuses at them. And then the oligarchs, right? The Roman Senate, the Roman aristocracy, the Roman upper classes, they made all the decisions in the capital. And they threw Christians to be fed to lions. They threw Palestinians like Jesus followers to be fed to lions, to entertain them, and then food, right, to keep them from getting too upset. And then like in Gladiator, you can see that where Trump is a like the Roman emperor in the 2000 movie Gladiator, right, starring Gerard Butler. The Roman emperors would sometimes play to the whims of the masses, right? So that Roman emperor, that Roman Caesar, he tried to bring the masses to his side, right, against the hidden oligarchy, the less visible oligarchy, because Caesar was more visible, right? But there's always an invisible oligarchy, just like the United States. Biden is visible. Trump is visible. Elon is visible. But then there's a whole other many millionaires and billionaires behind Trump and Biden, right? That they're not all on the same page. It's a chaotic basket case of ultra rich, powerful interests. Like, sometimes they call it the blob, or the deep state, or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter what you call it. You call it oligarchy. It's not a majority of the people. It's a minority of the richest and well-connected, obviously massively corrupt, under imperialist, colonialist, capitalist system. But it's many thousands of people, and the more money and the more you have, the more connected, the more you can play in that game of, you know, Western governance, whatever you want to call it, and directing where your empire is headed or your country is headed, depending on how you see it. But you and you know, France was like that as well. Like Louis the 14th was an absolute monarch who played, you know, everything. He played at different times the masses to win more power for himself against the oligarchy behind him, right? They often call, like in the Western history, they call those populist presidents, right? Like winning over the people against the oligarchy. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna get the. That doesn't necessarily mean that you will get everything you want done, right? You can stay out of jail. Like Netanyahu is also, right, kind of playing that game in a different way because he is trying to stay out of prison, right? By basically just like a lot of people don't want him around anymore, but he wants to stay in his position as the face of the country by just kind of perpetuating war. I mean, he's not very competent. He's not very good at perpetuating these horrible atrocities, right? And keeping the violence going as a kind of way of stopping prosecution, stopping the country from, you know, exacting from him, you know, what they feel they are owed. Now, of course, in one sense, that entire place is, you know, it's very much like the United States. From a native, I'm a native Hawaiian, so from a native person's perspective, the United States is, you know, it's an oppressor. From a Palestinian perspective, right? I mean, what Netanyahu's government is an oppressor. But internally, right, it's kind of like we have to, you know, he you know, and Trump also, right? And they say like any president that's losing popularity will start a war. It's actually the same policy that all U.S. and Western countries have followed. That where if you're getting in deep trouble, start a war. Like Bush did that. You know, now of course you don't need to have a president. It's not like an individual president just decides to start the war. The wars are going to get started either way because, you know, for an empire needs perpetual, endless war and conflict, and not just the conflict, but also the plunder and the subjugation to exact resources, bring slaves, cheap labor, and maintain hegemony and power, right? So, but you know, individual presidents can start these, can exacerbate or initiate new conflicts, and certainly make them very public, right? In order to galvanize support, silence dissent, blah blah blah. Anyway, so let's get back to the topic though. So, but the point that I was trying to make is that, like, as Rome collapsed, there were multiple Caesars at the same time, right? And it was a Roman civil war. I mean, it wasn't necessarily. There's a civil war is also a spectrum, right? It can have periods of cold civil war where there's not a lot of shooting, but there is like massive schisms. There are huge rifts in the population where they don't agree on who is even running the country, right? It's not the non-united states. Obviously, the United States had a civil war, right? A very formal one with a very hot civil war. It was called the U.S. Civil War, right? With the Confederacy and the North United States fighting the South. And you know, obviously nobody the spec. It's kind of like, you know, no place is completely 100% in agreement, but that's different from kind of like the country refusing to even recognize the government. Like, as I said, right, that's a whole nother, people being upset. Like, I don't, like, a lot of people didn't like John F. Kennedy. Many people really didn't like Richard Nixon, right? But most Americans that, you know, that identified as American, Native Americans, of course, you know, a different story. Native Hawaiians, different story. But people who identify as Americans, you know, Democrat, Republican, Independent, they didn't like fundamentally disagree that JFK was president. They weren't like, oh my God, no, John F. Kennedy is not our president. They might not like him, but they like, you know, they accepted that he was the president. Like, they might not have even liked Reagan, right? But Americans accepted that. I mean, many people who were upset under the Reaganomics system that began, or that was part of a acceleration towards, you know, neoliberalism, giving the rich and the powerful and corporations massive amounts of power, massive deregulation, etc. The beginning of the decrease of quality of life of future generations, right? That a lot of people in the 80s, like a lot of boomers, will cite that as the time. That's why Time magazine, when if you go, I went to the grocery store this week, and like so many weeks, there's a picture of like JFK and like Kennedy, you know, the CIA secret new information with starring Robert F. Kennedy's personal story and anecdotes. Bobby Kennedy, something Kennedy, right? And so the boomer era, right? They remember their like psychogeography, the spatial temporal history is like an archipelago of like the happy archipelago of you know, the good times, the Woodstock, you know, there's the civil rights, but you know, the Woodstock, we had the rock and roll, the music, peace, love, and rock and roll, smoking pot, partying, and you know, JFK, you know, was the first Catholic president. You know, it's about, you know, reasserting and building some kind of new coalition of who counts as Americans, because Irish and Italian and Catholic were, you know, they for a while, like, they did not apply, they need not apply, they didn't really count. And so it's kind of like this great progress for many, you know, for many boomers, baby boomer age people. And then Reagan was like a sudden like decline, right? It was like, oh my God, my dad is definitely like that, right? And he's we fell off a cliff. The party ended, and we were all screwed over by Ronald Reagan and these new corporate, you know, glass tower skyscrapers, and the wealth. Donald Trump was part of that, right? And the worshiping of greed. Greed is good, like Gordon Gekko, and you know, they put up parking lots and they build buildings all over our Woodstock party spaces, and like, obviously it's not necessarily wrong that inequality did increase, and the benefits to the rich and the wealthy did, and the power of wealth, corporations, millionaires, billionaires did increase in that time, and it has not stopped ever since then. And that's part of why the U.S. is where it's at as well. But let me circle back to what I was already trying to say, which is that like people accepted that Reagan was president. People don't accept, right? Reagan was Republican. He did win 85% of the vote, right? And he was like Donald Trump. He was also an actor. He was a personality. He was a celebrity, right? He was a Republican celebrity. A lot of people didn't like him, but they accepted that he was president of the United States, right? There's very little like trying to put Ronald Reagan like in prison, trying to get him out. Like there weren't entire portions of the country that were just like frothing at the mouth to, or just doing anything they possibly can, and saying that he has to be locked up, he has to be removed, he's not legitimate, he is a felon, he's a criminal, he has to just be put away. Technically, every single U.S. president is a war criminal and is a felon. You know, they're all responsible for what's happening in Palestine. Like, they're all responsible for some kind of genocide. Every U.S. president of Native people like myself. Of all the U.S. has never not been at war, except for maybe 7 to 9 years of its entire 200-year existence, right? And virtually all of those, certainly the ones in the last 80 years, it's all been massively criminal acts. So technically, right? So it's really like, yeah, Reagan oversaw horrible things in Central South America, in the Middle East. These are all criminal, massively criminal, right? We only recognize Biden doing the ongoing live streamed unaliving of children, right? We only see that now, but that has always been the case. But Americans weren't calling for Reagan to be locked up. And the thing is, Americans aren't calling for Trump to be locked up because of his wars. Right? I mean, obviously, this calls into question the morality of the entire United States and which includes the average American as well, and the choosing privilege and comfort over morality, what is right, justice, and living off the suffering of others, which is that's just Western culture. I mean, which is always to err on the side of a genocide-based comfort, basically. That's why Native people are always have to be around to remind colonizers that they should never get too comfortable, right? It's basically up to it's right. It's like if people didn't, the reason why so many people are out in the streets, right? College campuses, in cities, Greta Thunberg in Germany, everybody. I mean, just many, not everybody. Actually, not everybody. Younger generations who are being pushed out and choosing to not be complicit in empire, which includes genocide, inevitably. Not being complicit in that colonial capitalist empire, which all includes oppression, exploitation, and horrible, heinous evils to maintain itself, the Western system. So the younger generation, right? But part of the reason why they're even there is because the younger generation has grown up with the cell phone, has grown up with the internet, has grown up with mass, decentralized, to a large extent, international information and content and media distribution, right? Young people, I mean, you can see the chart. 70% of them, who are majority on TikTok. It just happens to young people are more on TikTok, and TikTok has far more pro, PALSTINA posts and less pro U.S. Western genocide posts. So what does that mean? That means that right. So the young people they have a different story of who their country is, who they are, right? Who Arabs are, who what the Levant region is, who Muslims are, right? Their barbarity. Because I remember, like, if you asked me, like, in 2000, like, I would be like, it seems like all of these Muslims are, like, extremely barbaric, and there's a lot of terrorist, but that's because that's what the Western media and games and TV and news and academia and universities, that's what you're bombarded with, right? It's just like constant. I mean, whether it's the conservative Church of Jesus Christ and the pastor brainwashing, or it's the Church of of blind worship of liberal academics and the New York Times bestsellers, they're both churches. They're both imperial brainwashing. It was unanimously the Arab world, right, is full of savagery, barbarism, and people that want to blow you up, and we have to stop them by initiating infinite warfare in Iran, Syria, Iraq, Kuwait, Afghanistan, and then there's like a handful of anti-war activists and some ex-military pissed off personnel that are like horrified by what they've done, but they're mostly silenced. Most of America didn't want to hear them because seeking comfort at the expense of billions of people suffering and death that's Western culture, that's American culture, that's Roman culture, that's British, French, and Spanish culture. I mean, that's what being a colonizer is, right? You are in the imperial core. You are in the country of wealth, right, where the nice things are, and the water, the uranium from Niger goes to like your Parisian Eiffel Tower and your luxury shops in the Champs-Élysées or in the streets of London, right? You in London, right? You sip the tea stolen from the Chinese that are all becoming the poorest country in the world. right? That to be a colonizer country, as a whether you realize it or not, your entire existence is premised on billions of people suffering and the world being destroyed. All of Europe for the last centuries upon centuries, and that was the Roman system as well. It was plundering North Africa, other parts of Europe, West Asia, so that a handful of people in the core could live at large. It's the same thing. Greece had slaves and it subjugated women. It's the same system. Very inefficient, absolutely immoral. The key is to stop people from recognizing keep people confused and or immoral. Some disinformed or like just kind of stuff down people's sense of goodness and rightness, and just like nihilism is a tool, and cynicism is a tool and a weapon of Western culture. The cynicism is an inherent that is Western culture, right? It's just, you need that. If you don't have like this all humans are bad, because that justifies the continued propagation of infinite war, exploitation, inequality, etc. Right? And so Western culture cannot survive without mass moral lobotomy. You need like these dead inside people. Like vampiric culture is white culture, right? Like, not just because it's pasty, but it's like that, like, right? You have to be willing to eat other people. And also Europeans were cannibals for centuries, by the way. And then they accused the Arabs and the Africans of all being people. They're the ones who actually literally ate mummies, and they ate other people. They ate black people, and they ate Arabs. In the Crusades, they were horrified actually when they discovered that these people invading would come and eat them, kill them, eat them, force them to do steal from them, and then run away, and calling themselves civilized, right? But that's Western culture. It's vampiric. Colonialism is international, country scale vampirism. Russian president just called Europe, the West, the ball of vampires. I mean, that's exactly what it is. And so you need vampiric people. You need these kind of people, and they don't necessarily all look like Matthew Miller of the Biden administration. But so that's another question, which is like, morally, where is the West headed? Because when the good news is that the younger generations is rejecting the parents' vampire bite, because the parents are trying to make their children. American parents are trying to make liberal and conservative American parents are trying to, when they're saying just vote for genocide, Holocaust, Harris, genocide, Joe, and horror, just hold your nose and become a vampire like mommy and daddy, right? Or the Trump. It's like, hold your nose and let's just keep, also being horrible. And younger generations are rejecting their parents' lobotomization and the children are rejecting the soul loss, right, of their parents. And so that, in that sense, it's like, where is the U.S. headed spiritually? Where's the U.S. headed morally? I mean, that's actually a positive outcome. They're supporting indigenous peoples. I mean, in Palestine and around the world, inside their own countries. They're supporting end of colonization and the capitalist systems, right? Younger generations, not so much the older ones. And so that's a positive outcome, right? Now there's still a split of like, I'm talking about like this kind of like, it's very uncertain because things are all over the place. The powerful majority older elements of the West still have huge power. They're still making decisions about where to bomb, whether to give ISRAEL more bombs, whether to send bombs and money to Ukraine to do more imperialism and fund more wars, whether to send them to the South China Sea and the Asia Pacific region and start more wars there. China just said to tell the army to get ready for war. Korea just is preparing. It looks like unfortunately, it looks like Korea is preparing for war. So I feel bad if anybody listening to K-pop or you like Samsung. That like the United States, I mean, I've said this a lot. If you're in the Western orbit, and if you're a Western ally, and you're anywhere near the actual enemies, Russia, China, Iran, especially Russia, China, especially China, you know, you will be sacrificed as cannon fodder. Countries, again, it's a ball of vampires. It's not a ball of democracy, human rights, and freedom, right? So South Korea will be blood sucked and bloodlet for the U.S. parasitic system, right? Americans won't really care. I mean, some young Americans, well, I should say, the vampiric millennial girls who love BTS, but still, but will cape for the U.S. empire, right? The Taylor Swift, the Swifties, right? That are like, they're not quite at the level of like, we got to stop all this colonialism everywhere. We have to get the U.S. empire out of everywhere. We have to get the Western colonial capitalist system out of everywhere. Those who still believe in that, they will cry a little bit when their favorite K-pop idols die, being crushed by the million in the second U.S.-backed imperial war in Korea. Or I should say the second outburst, because the U.S. killed 2 million Koreans, by the way, just in case you don't know history, but that's normal for Americans as well. I hope that the future America is people actually know some history of their own countries in the U.S., but unlikely. Well, I should say unlikely. I think that there will be something other than America. There will be Indigenous Federation of Plurinational North Turtle Island. It's probably likely what will happen. The United States is currently, is just making itself, American Star Spangled Banner is being made to mean what the Nazi swastika meant, which is what it has always meant. But, Leopold II killed 20. Hitler killed less than 10. Leopold II killed 20 million. But you remember the Hitler because he killed white people. It's part of colonialism, right? It's the parasitic. The way you remember atrocity is always in your own Western colonizer favor. So, but soon the true reputation of Europe and the United States, the G7, right? The Genocide 7, right? The Colonizer 7, right? That bloodlet every continent of Earth and subjugated billions of people. The reputations will become known. They are becoming known. The children of Americans and Europeans, as I pointed out before, are recognizing who and what the United States, Canada, Europe, and the vassals, even Japanese children, we're recognizing, oh my God, we have done these things. They're also supporting Palestine. There's huge, massive actions happening there. That is going to reorient. And I've made this point in a few other videos that there is already a mass disrooting. American children, number one, there's majority non-white, majority of people under the age of 18, majority of children in the United States are not white to start with. Now, you can be not white and still be an American, though. But the majority of young people don't proudly fly American flags. If you in surveys, if you ask like 20 years and under, the average young person, definitely like 20, 25-year-olds, the average young person, over half of them do not respond favorably to the American flag. And similar is happening in Canada. I don't know where Europe is exactly, but this is and it's not just that, because the ball of vampires, right? A vampire can only function, right? In the United States and Europe and the colonizer entities, these are vampiric, right? They are artificial. It's like South Korea. It's an artificial construction of the United States. Like Taiwan is based upon billions of dollars and weapons flowing into that little island. Like the U.S. occupation of Hawaii is artificial. Without billions and billions and billions and like Israel, without billions of dollars flowing in there constantly, where does that billions come from? Right? To keep settlers in these houses, to buy the resources to bring the cars in. Where is that coming from? It's not being made there. It's not being grown up with in a win-win cooperative equal. It's not based upon the labor of people of these places, South Korea, Taiwan, etc., and all of the colonizer entities, right? The United States, Europe, Canada, they're not making, U.S. What is the U.S. Supposed GDP? 20-something trillion. The United States doesn't make $20 trillion worth of materials. The United States steals trillions upon trillions of African coltan copper, cobalt for your iPhones and for your vapes and for all its products. It steals lithium wherever it can from South and Central America. It uses cheap labor in India or whatever Southeast Asian it can with neo-colonial, international banking subjugation there, and maintains it all through dollar hegemony, military, and imperial. Dollar hegemony, narrative control to soft power, social media, mainstream media, video games, movies, etc., and then control of tech and banking to maintain that power structure. U.S. doesn't make $20 trillion worth of anything. Arguably, the United States is worth negative $2 trillion because of how many debts it has. It's 35 trillion. Its interest on its debt is already surpassed the military spending of the United States. Just the interest on the U.S. country's debt. But in the sense of like what the U.S. actually produces, it's barely producing anything. It produces some food, a handful of airplanes that mostly crash, like Boeing. Some really crappy Teslas. It's not even producing them inside the United States. There are some products, but it's minuscule relative to what the U.S. claims it has. So where is the United States getting all of this stuff? It's stealing it from the rest of the world with its military and its financial weapons of mass destruction, like the dollar hegemony SWIFT system. That's being all of that is being undone by the international BRICS, the multipolar global majorities, new payment systems, new banking systems, new money and monetary and financial systems that are being rapidly constructed. The BRICS summit is happening very soon, or is it? I can't remember. It's happening within the next. It's either is it this week or it's sometime in the next week or couple weeks. Forget the exact date, but that is part of the global shift, right? And so where the global majority is heading, right? As the United States, as the planetary imperial leader of the planetary imperial capitalist colonialist structure, where the rest of the world heads also will impact where the U.S. heads, right? If the rest of the world is heading towards, we will not be, as I've said many times on these streams, the rest of the world is heading towards, we will not be subjugated anymore. We will not return to the colonial era anymore. We will not go back into, we will not go back into centuries of humiliation anymore. Africa will not be your continent to underdevelop so that you cannot starve us and keep us in the dirt and in the mud so that you can light your cities with our resources, so that you can build your cars with our steel. So you can make your phones with our stolen coltan and our stolen copper and our stolen lithium, right? And keep us enslaved and use us for cheap labor, right? So Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and all the Native Americans as well are going to be joining in with this. The Native Pacific peoples as well are saying no. So that limits where the U.S. can head. Right, the U.S., many Americans would. They're not going to say this, but many Americans would like to simply not have to think about what it means that they can't, sit around and pick colors for Walmart branding and call that $100,000 salary if you can get one. Many Americans and British and Europeans and French, they don't want to think about mommy and daddy could lose their 5 houses that they own, right? And the value of those houses. Most young people don't have this, but they say about 1 in 5 Western American, British, Canadian boomers, 60 to 50, 60, 70, 80 year olds. 1 out of 5 elderly Americans, Brits, and Canadians are millionaires. So they have children, right? And there's a good chunk of people, not a lot of them, but there's a chunk of people that basically survive with the bank of mommy and daddy. It's neofeudalism. That's why I made Neofeud, right? There's a good chunk of people. And those people, that's about, 20, 30, 40%. Those are the people that don't want to, they want to they're the people that put their finger in the ear when people shout out the names of dead Palestinian children at brunch, right? Mommy and daddy and the kids, right? The kids is like frolicking in LA, pursuing a career in, cupcake making for upscale hipsters, or going to Burning Man. That's a good chunk of the West still. Not the majority, but that's a good chunk, especially of like some millennials Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And then there's this divide. That's another one of these divides, where there's this divide between those people, those who are inheriting, right, millions of dollars. They have trust funds. Their parents have 5 houses. One, they rent out one house that pays for your college tuition, so you don't even have to pay for that. Another house pays for their cruise vacations and flying to see Miley Cyrus and Taylor Swift. There's another house, and that pays for all their, food and housing and basic needs. Another house pays for the medical care, and that is part of the ball of vampires. It's about 10. I don't know. It's hard to say exactly, but it's millions. It's millions of Americans and other Westerners, and they would like to keep. They're not going to say this out loud, but they would like to keep being vampires, parasitic landlords, right? Corporate tapeworms, right? They would like to keep having gainful employment at NYU as tenured professors with 5 houses, right? With beachfront property, taking their kids, taking their useless man and woman child kids who have never had a real job in their life to Disneyland every year, right? They want to keep partying. And that's a good chunk. That's a good chunk of the West still. That's another part of the problem. I mean, because within that class of people, right, this privileged, the conservatives are just like, I don't care about morality. I'm just, might makes right. Period. And so within the privileged and within the people that believe that, there is, there's conservatives and liberals amongst them, right? There's both, right? There are those who say, like, we have to support the freedom and human rights of the Palestinians while literally invested, right, and in their stock portfolios are invested in arms manufacturers, the giant banks that support this entire system, and in the prison industrial complex. But they'll say, like, I care about human rights to liberals, and some of the liberal progressives, and there's conservatives, and those people are split. Right, those are the ones that are fighting each other, saying we should vote for Trump, and others saying no, we should vote for Biden. Right, and many of them, and within that, I don't know what you call it, the parasitic, liberal, conservative, capitalist colonizer, true believer colonizers, or head in the sand colonizers, right? The ones that really believe in this racist colonialist capitalist system, like, America is a Euro-American project, blah, blah, blah. America is good, never did anything wrong, and everyone we kill is savage barbarians, right? Just like the OG conservative Romans were like that. There are many Romans that actually believe that, we shouldn't have so overt slavery, Some of them argued that, but other ones are like, no, everyone who is conquered by Romans deserves what they got, right? And so those are the conservatives and liberals of today. Within them, they disagree about who is president, right? And then there's the other class of people that's like, I don't like any of these presidents. I don't want a Kamala or a Trump, right? They're all, right, extracting. They're all committing massive crimes that benefits. And the thing is, it does benefit Americans. Without the genocide, American and British and Europeans and Canada, under their systems, they would be poor. They're getting poorer anyway. I mean, yes, it's kind of like, well, no. Somebody said 99.99% of Americans did not approve. It's nonsense, but somebody said did not choose to create all these colonies and be in all these wars and all these resource extractions around the world. I mean, that's true, and many of them don't realize how much is being done, but some do, many do, right? Especially if you work for one of these big entities, if you work for a bank, you got to research where the resources are. You got to research, like, what are the risks, what are the opportunity costs and the risks and the possibility of, the U.S. success in Iraq. I mean, many people do know. They have to know it's their job, right? The United States military is training for biological and chemical warfare on China, Korea, and that whole entire region. Like, they're practicing using chemical and biological weapons on innocent people. Military personnel. United States military, Marines, Air Force. It's joint. It's all hands on deck. Marines, Army, Air Force, Navy, working together using biological and chemical weapons. They're going to shoot missiles full of like sarin gas or super COVID. They already use malaria mosquitoes. I mean, among other things. They're practicing to kill 200 million Chinese right now. People, that's, they don't want to talk about it. American military, American bankers, American tech worker, Western tech workers, lawyers, they don't want to talk about it, but they know. That's why they get paid the big bucks, is to do immoral, horrible things. Right? That's why it's a ball of vampires. Anyone who's gainfully employed in the West, anyone who makes more than $50,000 a year in the West of any significant length of time, is a child murderer. So they know that they are sucking the blood of Palestinian children. They are draining the veins of Latin America. They are liquidating and crushing the children in the Congo. They are backing the slavery in Libya for their personal pay. They are mercenaries. Westerners are mercenaries. But they do a good job of pretending like they're innocent. They do a really good job. That's what liberals. That's why I say you need really good liars and cynical, like soul excised people. You have to. There were studies about how can we make sociopaths and psychopaths. The United States and the British. The British, they really were like, how do we get people to kill and be okay with killing other innocent people? Right? So actually, a majority of people early on would not even choose to fire. Majority of people would not choose to fire on their fellow man in these wars, even in the European feudal times, because they will see that the serfs seeing the other serfs, right? Or the British military seeing the French military, they will see their common humanity, and there's a good chance they will not shoot and they will turn against their superiors. This is actually why pawns in chess cannot attack face to face, because it was recognized. So, but part of the Western history is the science of fomenting and constructing psychopathy in the population. Part of this is like normal. Part of the reason why you see all these articles is to kind of just bombard people with this and this kind of vapid culturalist, this hedonistic wealth worship, and just kind of like the emptiness of Western culture is part of cultivating a hyper selfish, immoral, amoral, sociopathic. Because you need those kind of people that will be okay, right? Because you're gonna need a huge number of lawyers, bankers, executives, marketing people, doctors that are gonna recommend opioids. Murderers in the military. You need hundreds of millions of functionally, in terms of what they do in their life, functionally psychopathic, amoral people to operate the West, to operate the United States, Europe, Canada, the colonial capitalist system, right? And so that's why they have to put all it's like that's another thing where it's an artificial construction without being bombarded with the pictures of like, without being bombarded with this kind of empty culture and the normalization and this double speak that like, oh yeah, well, we killed these innocent people, but it's for a good cause, or this just seeing powerful people get away with the most horrible, heinous things, right? Just like having a hurricane kill, it's actually tens of thousands of people by people on the ground. The reports are like 500 in this town here, 800 is in the Hurricane Helene. Watching tens of thousands of people be killed, millions be displaced, and then the government do nothing is part of creating dead inside Americans. You're like, well, I mean, that's just how it is. People just like, poor people and suckers that get killed and suffer, and the government and corporations and the rich to get away with it and whatever, and then you create empty people, right? That's not necessarily the Americans' fault, but over time, if you are constantly bombarded with and then this endless barrage of malice, just outright evil, and people are you have to accept that as the norm, and actually it's good and acceptable, and that's that creates the people who go on to become lawyers for Lockheed Martin. That goes on to create the people that become FEMA directors that take 90% of all the revenue from donors, and that's supposed to go to help people in disasters, and then give it to the rich, right? That creates the military personnel, the generals, the officers, right? That creates the you're right. So the West, it is a ball of vampires. It's a ball of empty people. So in that sense, like if the U.S. heads nowhere, like if the U.S. disappears, if the U.S. and Europe and the West disappear, that would be actually great for the world from that perspective. Now, obviously, I don't think they're going to vaporize into nothing. The people won't just disappear off the face of the earth, or I don't think they'll just all be killed by enemy Russian, Chinese, Iranian, North Korean joint forces. Although, I mean, that is a possibility. The Chinese are preparing for war. Xi Jinping just ordered the Chinese military to prepare for war. So, I mean, like, you should know that you're going to lose, in case you don't. But I mean, that is a possibility. I hope that's really horrible. I don't hope for that. But at the same time, how do you come back from absolutely immoral acts like this, right? How does a vampire come back from killing and sucking the life out of hundreds or thousands of people, right? Like Biden. How does Biden and Harris come back from that? How does Trump come back from that? How did Trump, Biden, and Harris? Any of these people come back from that? The Green Party is not going to win anyway. And one of those guys, the Green Party vice presidential candidate, is out there clowning around and embarrassing himself at this in many circles right now, in the international sense. So I mean, the Green Party is never really on the ballot in any real. They're never going to be president of the United States. It doesn't matter who is president at all. So whether it's Green, Democrat, Republican, let's be real, it doesn't matter. Statistically, according to Princeton, 99.5% of all policies is dictated by where the money comes in to pay for the absolutely corrupt plutocratic U.S. imperial action. That whatever gets the most lobbyists and money thrown at it, that is what will happen. It's irrelevant who is president, in Congress, in the courts, the Supreme Court. It's irrelevant, scientifically irrelevant. So, I mean, short of absolute complete system change, that's not going to happen. So, yeah, how does the United States, right? 8 billion people have watched. I mean, 90, because in the West, 50%. I mean, think about your parents, right? Think about your parents who deny genocide is happening. They're like, oh no, Israel has the right to defend itself, right? Think about some people have some. I don't know the exact number, but it's some of the numbers I've seen is like 30, 50, 60% of elderly Americans and Westerners believe that Israel's on the right side, and they're doing the right thing, and they're doing all they can. America and Europe's doing the best that they can to stop it. Again, amongst younger people under 35, it's majority support. Not I guess this video is already screwed in algorithmically because I said it's but they support Palestine. So but that's, so I don't know, it's 50%, 60%, hard to say, but it's a solid chunk of the West that is. The kids are saying, I am completely changed by a year straight of watching children brains falling out of their heads, snipers, American and European paid for and sent, and Western, Canadian, etc. sent and supported, and political and moral cover given to this military that has snipers that are just aiming at pregnant women and shooting at the mom and the baby and saying, one bullet, two hits. Like I'm completely changed watching a year straight of this ongoing live streamed Holocaust. Like that's a good half, at least half of the population. Now the population again is, I mean, obviously that means things are going to change, right? No, the evidence that there is no Western democracy, there is no U.S. free and any place that calls itself the free world is not a democracy, right? Any U.S. or Western country is not a democracy, because even there you have probably a majority of the masses, even Republicans, conservatives are saying, I don't know about this other stuff, but I don't really want to see any more these Palestinian kids getting blown up. This is ridiculous. Now some of them are like, screw those Palestinian kids, but a lot of even Republicans and conservatives are like saying we got to stop that. We got to stop this blowing up these hospitals. We got to stop blowing up these schools. So that's another evidence there's no such thing as democracy in the West. Because if there's democracy, if it's the demos, the government, the kratos by the demos, right? The government by the people. It's what democracy supposedly means. Although the Greeks never did it themselves. They are always run by a minority of their oligarchies, with their women servants and their non-Hellenic slaves. But if it was a real democracy, then the genocide would have stopped already. But it hasn't. So anyway, this last year has already irrevocably changed the future, right? Because we're talking about where the U.S. is headed, not where the U.S. and where the West is now. Where is it headed? The children are already irrevocable. They were already changed by watching the planet burn while their parents are partying, right? They were changed by watching all their presidents and their government, their Congress and their courts sit around and do nothing, and watching even millennials. We were changed. Like I was changed in 2008-09 when I watched Goldman Sachs. Like I talked about this in some of the last streams. I watched Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, and the richest, most powerful billionaires and banks in the world destroy the global economy, wreck everyone's future, wreck my future personally, but also wreck the economy, steal money out of my parents' pension fund. Their entire retirement got cut in half in like a week, right? Along with Lehman Brothers, right? And even in 08-09, right? That millennials lost faith in the United States. They lost faith in that entire project to a large extent, and we are spending, many of us, except for that 30% that have millionaire parents that like just leeching off of mommy and daddy's settler colonizer, Wall Street money or landlord money, or being a boomer raised during the American primacy moment, right? So if those of us who are not of that, those of us who don't have super privileged parents, and some even have inherited American and Western boomer Gen X wealth, but they choose to spend their time fighting against that, right? Like, I mean, there's many people that are like documentary filmmakers. Like, I know one of them works with Oahu Water Protectors, supports Native Hawaiians. He's spending his life, all the free time that he has, because he has millions of dollars of familial wealth stored up in housing and stocks, in cash assets, blah, blah, blah. Right? And so a lot of millennials are like, because we have witnessed so much of this horrors, not all of us, but many of us choose to harm our own interests as people who inherit some amount of wealth, to fight the system that privileges some over others, right? The colonial capitalist imperialist system. So a lot of that was because of things like Occupy Wall Street was a response to a democratic, absolute catastrophic failure, right? I remember a time when I didn't have, a part of it was just I wasn't educated enough in that time. But there's a time where it wasn't so obvious to me how absolutely corrupt and illegitimate the whole U.S. system is. But after 08-09 and that era, and watching, being at Occupy, it's kind of like, it's like the Palestine, it's like the Vietnam War struggle, right? It's a lightning rod that infuses a whole generation, and in multiple generations. It's a moment that catalyzes and it's like an explosion of morality in a infinite canyon of hellish darkness. It is like Vietnam, Occupy Wall Street, the Black Lives Matter, and the Palestinian mass movement are like, they're like garlic bombs in the ball of vampires. You know what I'm saying? It's like a sudden mass explosion of healing from this colonial soullessness and amorality, psychopathy. It's like, oh my God, we have a little bit of morality here. And then the vampires kind of try to smush and stomp it back down, right? And they have Nancy Pelosi kneel with a kente cloth, and they bring out Jesse Jackson. They get, okay, everybody go back to sleep. If you don't, we're gonna lock you all up, just like we did in the civil rights of Vietnam, Occupy Wall Street, and then you can all beg for GoFundmes to get your mass actually moral people out of prison, like Mumia. You can beg to get the black activists and their supporters out of prison for the next, and the threat. So those are all threats, right? Because if the United States was moral, it would be celebrating. Thank you so much, Mumia Al-Jabal. Thank you so much, Martin Luther King, for your correct analysis of these horrible things we're doing. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, you are so right though. We, the United States government, corporations, business, we the leaders, right? We of the United, we see the errors of our ways. We will stop the war in Vietnam willingly for good reasons because it's immoral. We will stop harming black people with this racist inequality, the prison industrial complex, redlining, etc., racialized capitalism. We will stop this economic inequality. We will fix our problems, right? That was like if the United States and the West was not absolutely morally bankrupt ball of vampires, but it's not. It just said die, right? The United States murdered Martin Luther King for being a good person and killed Malcolm X for being a truth teller, right? And that's just how the West is. It's just who it is, right? And the liberals said, the liberal vampire said, I totally did not, they stuck their fingers in the ears, and when they said, that this was all done by your government, right? And your country did this, and they stuck their fingers in the air, and they said, no, Martin Luther King, he just had a dream somewhere that one day, and so that's, so that's the amorality of that entire class of people, and it's never changed at all. So, in that sense, yeah, I don't know, right? It's hard to really say where the U.S. is gonna head, but the younger generation are in part because they're being mass exposed to these actual crimes through, as I pointed out, this is Chinese technology. It's a non-Western technology. TikTok is a offshoot of Douyin, that is a Chinese social media platform that's not controlled by the West, and TikTok has penetrated to such an extent that the majority of young people have been using it, and they're trying to ban it, but it's been difficult because the West has no answer to it. And so, the TikTok was where the majority of these pro-Palestinian, it's not because the Chinese pushed it, but they did not censor, and they did not censor, unlike Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, Western social media, right, has been censoring and getting rid of and downplaying and deranking. That's why I was trying to not say the word Palestine on this video, right? Because the West has no such thing as freedom of speech ever. It never has had it, and it tried to crush any kind of actual truth telling that matters. So, but they can't do that. It couldn't do it with TikTok, and young people, were like just if in order to keep the eyeball share, right? Because of people were like, oh, I don't give a shit about your crappy McDonald's McFlurry. I'm not gonna look at some bad Instagram post. I want to know what's happening with this important news right now. The Holocaust is happening right now, and I want to find out about the most important, one of the most important things happening on this earth in Palestine. And then young people were leaving Instagram and Facebook even more than they already were. So it's not because, it's actually that the non-Western platforms are a check. That's a real check. It is a actual competition, so that it is actual check and balance to Western tech informational narrative power. So they can't just say and do whatever they want anymore, right? Because if they fully censor and it's like if they fully censor and get rid of all of the Palestinian content, then young people are going to be jumping, and they might jump anyway. But it's like they are. It was to stop the eyeball share being lost, they had to actually change the policies to allow they still lessen the exposure and the visibility of Palestinian struggles and other things like that, but it's not to the extent that they would have hoped to. And then also just the fact that so much of that got out through TikTok, the story got so big and so widespread, they couldn't contain it anymore, right? Because the thing is, the Iraq War, Syria, this all happened when there was Twitter. This all happened when there was, there wasn't social media, but there was media, right? But the story, when it got so big that it could not be contained anymore, right? That was when it really it spiraled so far out of control that there was no way that the U.S. And the Western colonial powers could memory hole Palestine and this last year like it did Syria, like it did a lot of other parts of a lot of parts of West Asia and Africa historically. That was what they learned about Vietnam. They said, oh, if Americans discover the genocide that American cars and suburbs are built on, they're gonna get mad, right? And then they said, don't report on any more of our wars. And they got away with that because, just to give you one example, Chris Hedges was a foreign New York Times correspondent for 25 years, and then he got fired because he was reporting on a very important war, U.S.-Iraq war, and what was happening there, right? So all the West has to do is just fire all the moral people, right? That's how you know you live in a sick, psychopathic society, because if you actually did the moral thing as a journalist, right, reporting the truth and the facts to a so-called democracy so they can make decisions, right? You actually reported the truth about what was happening in Iraq, then they just got fired. So the belief that journalism will change anything in the United States as a profession is misplaced, unfortunately, for a whole multitude of reasons, not the least being that careerist journalism under a corporate capitalist system is inevitably going to result in your elimination if you do anything that actually jeopardizes the system that employs you, which is scary to a lot of people who are like careerist journalist types. It's not to be bad. It's not a bad impulse to want to do that, but like they have some like weird ideas about, well, if I just share enough information in my New York Times or my CNN or wherever, it's gonna change anything. That is not how that's not how it actually works. And it's even like, even if people do get exposed, to information, there's also a Western concept that if people get exposed to information, they will make the right choice. That's also false, right? If Americans and Westerners and not as capitalists, but Americans, etc., being exposed to the truth of evil and crime and immorality, right? If that resulted in them changing their ways, their system, the West would not function, like as I already said, right? It takes tens or hundreds of millions of lawyers, executives, marketers, managers, military personnel, soldiers, pilots, programmers of the Where's My Daddy system, right? Like Aaron Bushnell self-immolated, but there are still millions of American military that are committing absolutely immoral acts. So there's one Aaron Bushnell and then the 999 non-Aaron Bushnells. That's a ball of vampires. The U.S. military is a ball of trigger-pulling, child-murdering vampires. I'm sorry, that's what it is. Desire of people to think their uncle was a good guy because he fought under the so-called freedom and American flag. That is part of your ball of vampireness. That is your vampirism. And so it is incorrect to believe that journalism or just learning the truth can change the United States. And not just the United States government, the American citizens. It is incorrect to believe that learning the truth can and will change Europeans, Canadians, and all the U.S. vassals. That's false. Because if it did, if it did while you're working at that giant banking corporation, when you're working as a Goldman Sachs high frequency trading algorithm programmer, like I almost did, then if that changed enough of those people that it made a difference, right? Those people would stop doing those jobs and stand up against that system. But some people work in the military. Some people work for huge banks. Some people work for huge, horrible corporations. And afterwards, right? Or they quit and then they try to fight that system. But it is not the majority. It is not the majority. If it was, the system would already be gone. It's not. So learning the truth is not enough. It takes something much. It takes more than learning. It's important. It's important. Like without young people accessing what was happening in Palestine, it would, we wouldn't have the actions that we do have now. But it's more than just learning the truth. It takes people, it takes people like exercising their soul. Like, it's kind of like, you have to be beaten down and trained and conditioned and converted into being a soulless vampiric colonizer, capitalists, corporate, whatever, military personnel, right? But you have to kind of be trained, you have to be untrained, or you have to like, I don't want to use the two wolves metaphor, but it is similar, right? You have to like be connected to a community of people, right? An organization, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, BIPOC organization, supporting organization of some kind. You have to actively face on a daily basis this reality. You have to, because you have to be, it's a daily thing. You have to do decolonization, you have to do decapitalism, you have to do reclaiming your soul, you have to do undoing, the soul loss, as some like the anti-colonial thinkers have described it, right? You have to reclaim little, like your soul is like little bits of fairy dust, it's like little bits of spark collecting in a jar, like fireflies. Every day you have to claim little bits of the jar of fireflies that the United States and the West has stolen from you. One job, one witnessing a sexual harassment in your workplace at a time. One hearing about a bombing of Arabs and then doing nothing at a time. One, watching, a police, beat some poor non-white person at a time. Every time you see that and then you just do nothing happens, right? That's a little firefly leaving your soul. By the time you turn 25 or 30, your soul's gone as an American or a European or a Canadian or an Australian. It's just gone. It doesn't exist anymore. But you have to reclaim that with like consistent, empirical, concrete, moral acts that might cost you some of that career. And that's like very hard because there are no jobs in the West. There are almost no jobs, and nothing that pays reasonable salaries, dignified wages to do the right thing. And and that's part of the puzzle. That's how empires can maintain themselves. It's going, well, make it economically unfeasible to be a moral person. And that's why teachers all quit within the first year or two. It's in the first 5 years, most teachers all quit. And even if you're teaching, you're still doing immoral stuff, like teaching U.S. colonial capitalism was a great, awesome thing, and Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But even that, right, it's kind of like just to do anything that could be slightly considered like good has to be downtrodden and kicked down the ladder. And we have to praise, we have to, simultaneously like say, oh, well, we love our teachers, but you don't, though. You pay them like garbage. Oh, we love our nurses and we love our care workers. No, you don't. Actually, you treat women and care workers like garbage. And that's why the majority of the actual people that are radicalized and actually doing this work is like a lot of them are majority women and they're majority non-straight white dudes. But anyway, I'm not really talking about the U.S. future, but that is like what will the population of the United States look like? I think the United States population is going to be wearing a lot more keffiyehs. It's less and less. Nobody. I mean, Disney. I mean, think of how many things have just changed in the last year. Disney is losing money, losing prestige. McDonald's, Domino's, all Western corporations, right? The KFC. Nobody likes Chick-fil-A, but not just them, right? Starbucks, is like genocide bucks. Everything, universities, the education system, all U.S. Western educational institutions, corporate brands, government institutions, higher education. I see professors left and right. Professors I have known for some time. They are quitting university. They're like starting their own like Silver Spook University. Like just a quick shout out to Silver Spook University. If you become a Silver Spook Patreon, you can get access to Silver Spook University, which is what? Decolonize history, current struggles, imagined futures, and cultural analysis from Native myself, activist, educator, science fiction writer, professional game developer. What you need to know today, how to teach your children Western lies about past, present, and future permeate formal schooling, modern books, and media, and visions of the future that are shrouded in the fog of war and collapse. And anyway, so this is like it's just like an organized, semi-organized catalog of like all the content I've ever produced: video, text, Twitter, social media threads. So people can just like easily like look up a particular topic and find information about that. If you don't want to go through every single, you don't want to just like tune into a Silver Spook live stream and see if you learn something. You can like try to learn what you want to learn. I'm not a professional educator. I mean, I guess technically I am, but we educate here at the Silver Spook Cooperative, our own children as well as people around the world, obviously. But I see like ex-university professors, Canadian professors, American professors. They're trying to get out of the university system because they realize the university itself is irrevocably, terminally, cancerously corrupt and complicit in a genocide. And even before that, they were treating the average college professor was a permatemp grad student, paid less than $20,000 a year, absolute poverty wages, living in a Toyota Corolla, rationing cans of tuna fish for dinner. That was the average college professor. Like one of my cousin literally is a broke college professor, and that's the average. And that was that it's a plan that's immoral, you know, and it's a hedge fund. U.S. military contractor weapons fence. That's what universities are for, and also for entrapping children into multi-$100,000 of student debt to force them into the military to get loans forgiven. And like I have said that for many years now, but like many professors that I know personally, even Richard Wolff is like trying to get. I see he's trying to have his own non-university affiliated programs. Why is that happening, right? Is it because universities magically became evil? Did American and Canadian and European universities become evil in the last year? No, they've always were like that. It's just that it was revealed by, again, it was a Chinese Eastern counter-imperialist tech platform that enabled a lot of the sudden massive visibility to be forced, right? You would not. The thing is, on Al Jazeera, there's other platforms. Like there's actually Arab other platforms. In Al Jazeera, the Arab people, they've been watching the brains of children fall out every day for decades. You know everything Americans are saying. Arab people, Lebanese people in Iraq, you know, they've been. I mean, they can see it live because their families are getting their brains blown up. The United States has killed way more than Israel has killed in the last year and in their entire existence. The U.S. and Britain and France, these are the OG colonizers. These people they're like hyper genocidal. They bloodlet entire continents of people. So, but Al Jazeera, other non-Western platforms, you know, they if you go into an average cafe in the Arab community, they'd just be watching that. Oh my God, what are they killing all of our family members? And I think there's this guy Scott Atran in the 2000s said, "Hey, he was one out of like 20 university professors, academics, and scientists that gathered for this event called the Second Enlightenment." And that was another hint that I was like, "Oh my God, this university is absolutely immoral. It is a vampiric, it is Vampire Academy, and not like a cool anime. I mean, it's like Psychopath Academy. It's a place to build liberals. That's what universities are for, to build blood-sucking vampires, right?" I quote Mr. Hammond from Jurassic Park. It's not they make lawyers. Universities make lawyers. Settler colonialism and colonial capitalism justifiers, also known as university professors. And they make programmers for Raytheon and the military industrial intelligence complex in Silicon Valley. Right? That's what Western universities are for, to make those people, and then to get people to be forced into being stormtroopers. So Scott Atran, let me get that up in case you want to. I recommend this. I think it's only going to get more relevant. It was what is it, Beyond Oh shit. Um, yeah, Beyond Belief 2007. Okay, watch his video. So Scott came in there. There was a cavalcade of professors. Some of them were like V.S. Ramakandran. I remember him because I was a studying to be a neuroscientist, cognitive computing specialist, or AI specialist at the time. Um, yeah, and he gave this talk. It was called Beyond Belief, but in it, like he was talking about a barrage, right, at this scientific conference, of all the best academics, intellectuals. He's like, what we have seen is a nonstop onslaught of anti-Muslim, anti-Islam, anti-Arab lies and propaganda and half truths. And you basically, yeah, and most of the audience, Sam Harris was there. Richard Dawkins gave his talk about the God delusion. Sam Harris said we have to, yes, religion is superstition and it's bad. New atheism was basically just a imperialism for liberals. It's an imperial colonial capitalist pro-genocidism for liberals. Like, let's get those kids listening to Linkin Park and hating their conservative Christian quiverful parents that now live in San Francisco and New York. Let's get them all to sign up for Empire. That's basically what New Atheism was, unfortunately. And you can hate religion. YouTube began largely as New Atheists debating with Christians and agnostics. I was even part of that. I was mostly just like kind of like fascinated by all this interesting philosophical discussion. But I mean, but a big part of it was you can hate God, and you can be very smart and intellectual and understand that God is not provable and real, and religion is anti-scientific, anti-rational thought, and it must be destroyed and removed from the world. And Sam Harris, right, who was like, he spoke the most in that entire conference. He said, like, and his thing was, yes, religion is bad, but in particular, Islam and Muslim religions are the worst, and we have to destroy Iraq, Iran, Syria, all these. We have to excoriate all the Muslims from Palestine, from everywhere. And he was given the most standing ovations. He was brought back, and he was the most celebrated amongst Western academics, right? Amongst doctors, the scientists, astrophysicists, like Neil deGrasse Tyson was there, computer scientists, quantum physicists, leading biologists. Like Dawkins himself is a biologist, a British biologist, and everyone was cheering for the Red Sea running red with the blood of Arabs. You know what I'm saying? This is Western academia, and I was like, oh my god. Part of me was I couldn't pinpoint it at that time. I couldn't pinpoint it at that time. And Scott goes, this is how we actually find people that are doing the crime, and it's like we look for soccer clubs, and we look for like, but basically he said like we have young people, they're poor. Arabs are 15 to 25 times more likely to go to prison and be poor in places like France and Belgium, and they get radicalized because they're mistreated. The people in their homelands are mistreated, and that's why 9/11 happened. That's not the only reason, but that's why there is resistance, because you are treating them with apartheid, because you United States, you Europeans, you Westerners, you the collective West, you liberals in your university. He didn't say that directly, but basically is what he's saying. If we just stop bombing and killing and stealing all the resources and blowing up the children's hospitals, there would not be all this resistance, right? And then when he said that, then there's just silence, and then everybody basically was like, oh. And then they moved back into, oh, Sam, what did you say about killing all the Arabs still? That's academia. That's Western academia. Right? Let's talk about killing all the Arabs though. Right? Let's talk about atheism. Richard Dawkins, tell me about how we have to get rid of all the religions, especially Islam. Right? That's Western academia. Right? That's so much. Remember, I don't know if you remember. If you're old school YouTuber, OG YouTubers, you will remember this. It was like half the channels on YouTube were just like religion debate channels. Not all of them were saying that, but the where the U.S. empire, the military industrial complex, Wall Street, the plutocracy was trying to guide everyone was towards yes, you can hate God. I mean, you can love God and you can support global imperialism and war by wanting to bring about the rapture, right? That's the right wing conservative Christians, right? The Republicans. You can, if we keep funding Israel, then we'll fulfill the Christian apocalyptic prophecies, right? This right? And then for the liberals, you can be an atheist and be mad at your parents because you were gay, and you're so smart because you figured out that you don't have a sky daddy or something like that. And I'm not saying that you're an absolute idiot because if you don't believe that's in a particular sky daddy, but I'm saying like that's not, I mean it's not. I mean you don't be anyway. If you leave your conservative Christian Republican parents and go to some blue Democrat city, you can be an atheist and smart, and you can watch the Golden Compass, read your Dan Dennett, read your Richard Dawkins, read your Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, right? Just don't forget to sign up for the U.S. military, U.S. Wall Street banks, and blow up the entire world to get rid of the really bad religion. It's called Islam. And anyway, I just want to point that out because I remember when I watched this video. That's one reason why I didn't go to San Diego and San Francisco, is because I watched this whole conference, and then I was like, when I watched all these like these scientists, these are like top of the line neuroscientists who discovered like what synesthesia is, right? It's like this amazing phenomenon where you can see one is blue and two is red. I made videos about this. These are scientists who are like worked on the first artificial intelligences, right? These are like, leading people, cognitive people. These are like top astrophysicists, right? And then this one guy just, he's a friend of Noam Chomsky as well. He just pointed out. I mean, he's not like a radical left. He's just like a, he's like a guy that's trying to, he's been to the Middle East and has tried to investigate what is causing. He's actually an anthropologist. He's spending time with indigenous people in South America, and he went to spend time with Arabs in Iraq, in poor communities in France and in Britain, and he actually studied like what is actually causing, these attacks on 9/11, the bombings in Paris. There's a lot of bombings in Europe in that time, and like what he discovered, what is causing it? It's called racism, it's called colonialism, it's called imperialism, and it's endless military-industrial complex and your war. That's what's causing it. And everybody, but the rest of the community, rest of the academic Western liberal community, right, or just whatever, the university world was just like, no, that can't be it. It's got to be just Arabs are just barbaric. Because like I watched CNN or MSNBC and they told me that, right? And I was like, oh my God. I cannot go to this. I cannot continue in this Western academia. I mean, this is disgusting. Because actually, I'm really glad I saw that video, because if I hadn't, I might have done something horrible. I might have $300,000 a student debt working for Lockheed Martin, or high frequency trading algorithms for BlackRock or some garbage. You know what I'm saying? So thank goodness, because yeah. But anyway, so that's why that's part of what's happening, is that it is too hard for the vampire ball of Western, white especially, but not exclusively, professors and university personnel and students to continue to deny the reality that their universities are giant blood-soaked hedge funds masquerading as places of learning and places of literal arms dealer recruitments and planetary genocidal machines. So, I mean, that's really great. I mean, because, I wish that, there's another version of 2007. Oh my gosh. You're totally right, because I am a rational PhD. I ostensibly have a 4-year, 6-year, 8-year degree in how to think. I do critical thinking, right? I'm a university graduate. Oh my gosh. I mean, ostensibly, that's what university teaches you how to think, right? To become a so-called educated, critical thinking, worldly, rational person or something. That's what Western university supposedly does. No, but that doesn't. All it does is train you to support the neo-feudal butt-kissing system of the the tenured white man colonial capitalist plantation that pretends to be a place of learning called Western academia. We just try to. It's a game of footnotes, and it's a game of who can show up to the most meetings and write 300 pages of fucking word salad for money. So the university system could have, if I had seen that, oh my gosh, you're totally right. We see the errors of our ways. How can we, as rational thinkers, we don't have any actual empirical ways to refute the things that you have said, and also that's just absolutely immoral. And everything we're doing is involved in this absolutely immoral system. We, all of the faculty, all of these universities, we are going to collectively come to. We cannot tolerate this any longer. We must stop. We have to all stop the United States and the collective West and all of our militaries from doing this, so that we can stop this, bombing, and stop. We can stop the terrorism of our own. We can stop the 9/11s. We can stop these attacks on our own countries and our own people if we stop our greater violence against them, right? But that's not where the university is. The university is like, I just want to keep having brunch, researching like redshift of particular galaxies because I find that fun. I just want to have brunch immorally and do weird nerd shit. That's Western academia. It's absolutely, it's horrible. I mean, you can go to China and Russia and study, and you can not be part of genocide. But I mean, you can't do it in the West. I'm sorry. Anyway, now that I've insulted all of Western universities and all their professors, students, and Oxbridge's garbage bridge, Harvard, Princeton, and Yale are just Emperor Palpatine training facilities. And now that I've stopped the thing is, like, everyone is realizing what I've always said. Richard Wolff is now offering classes because he is realizing what I have always said, because everyone comes to the true professor of the galaxy, that is me, and they learn the truth eventually. It takes you a long time sometimes, but I'm just joking. But I mean, there are many professors that are offering classes outside of the U.S. in the Western system because of this. But so where is the U.S. headed? But yes, 133. I gotta go soon. So without liberal manufacturing facilities, right? That's what universities are. Without, it's going to be hard to make future vampires for the ball of vampire. How are you going to have the ball of vampires if you don't have kids going to those kind of universities? If you don't like, if kids are refusing, like, if more and more parents are educating their kids based upon, like myself, millennials and younger, that are educating their kids against what the U.S. liberal or conservative diseducation wants kids to learn, how are you going to replicate Americans, right? Americans will cease to exist eventually, right? Or there'll be something else, there'll be like moral people, in North America, and so the United States, in that sense, it could just disappear. Now I'm not saying that, that like it's like the one, all the American, this is the thing though. I was thinking about it while I was working on Neofeud. What makes is a city bad because it has neon? Because you look at dystopia, right? Like dystopia, relating to imagined state of society where there is great suffering or injustice, right? What makes it a dystopia, right? It's like it looks like Netflix shows about Russia with the infinite gray filter. That's why. With a lot of dystopian fiction, like pictures like really big buildings and neon, like cyberpunk and dystopia are like synonymous, like Blade Runner, right? This dystopia is what is dystopia? Dystopia is when white supremacy is replaced with Asians, right? That's Blade Runner, right? It is the fear of what if the center of the world moves from the West, from London, Paris, New York, Washington, to Beijing. Beijing and Beijing and Shanghai and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the revolutionary help comes from Beijing, though. What if cities, but not white, controlled? The thing is, they want Asians in the world, right? Holly and I just saw this Cybertruck guy this guy in a Cybertruck get out of his car, and we had never seen a Cybertruck in this area, but it's like the first one, and it was number one. The thing looks like a giant toy. It looks like it's gonna start rusting any second. It looks like a joke. It looks like, yeah, it looks like spray painted silver cardboard put over like a Winnebago or a little Toyota sedan that somebody's using to cosplay like Laura Croft's low polygon boob 90s car from Deus Ex. It looks like the 90s car from Deus Ex. I know what it is because I have driven the 90s car from Deus Ex. I made a Deus Ex mod. You know, that late 90s, early 90s video games that Elon Musk likes, that I also like. I just want to say, Elon Musk is making it so hard for me to do Cyberpunk, because everybody thinks, Cyberspook, you're making a Cybertruck game. You're like making a rich tech dickhead asshole game. You're like making an Elon Musk game. What? I don't want to play a Cybertruck game. Even Cyberpunk 2077 is this huge horrible corporation that everybody like worships, but it's like a giant AAA capitalist entity that like didn't make a game for 10 years and spent all of its money on its two billionaires, right? It has Elons in charge, you know. And then it spent a lot, like Elon spent money on PR to make itself seem good to people. But then you find out later on, oh yeah, I was actually exploiting everyone. It's massively underpaid people working there. The artists couldn't afford, while they're working on Cyberpunk 2077, to live in the city where they were making that game. It was all a lie, you know. But people believed it because they copied the Elon system. And so, anyways, so Cybertruck and what makes a city bad? You know, what is it? Is it this? There's cyber there? Is it because there's neon in the sky? Is it because the lights? I mean, it's kind of like, you know, oh, it's such a big city. Part of the reason why is I don't think you could even say, but there was a fear of these big growing cities in Asia. All right, part of this is actually a Napoleon. It is a copium, right? It was like these Asian cities, they're getting so big and so huge, and they're looking really cool. And American and British and European cities, we are stagnating, and we're like falling behind, right? Because the thing is, like, if you look at the modern, like if you look at the Chinese cities today, they're more advanced than anything that even Japan or Korea could produce. You know, they're all Japan and Korea are falling apart because they're going with the West with the United States. At least I can find one of those videos. I spelled China wrong. Yeah. Here's the 10,000 drones. They have like, it's like science fictional cyberpunk super advanced cities in China that's surpassed. They have unprecedented 10,000 drone swarm, like unmanned aerial firework display simulations. I mean, it's like they're breaking all of the records. They're surpassing all expectations. And the way that the United States and the West reacts to China is, but at what cost? This is all horrible. Like, this is falling apart, right? Like that attitude. But what that is because East Asia is just a giant, for the most part, long-term Western colony, like Palestine, like the Arab world, like a lot of the Arab world, like a lot of Africa. But the East Asia, it's been harder for them to subjugate for many reasons. But you know, all the video games, all the microchips, all the software, every bit of all the every semiconductor in your PS4, your PS5, your Xbox, your computer, your cell phone, everything, all that stuff is made. A lot of the minerals are harvested in Africa, but the stuff is actually, the hardware is made and the software is largely made in Asia, somewhere in Korea, Taiwan, which is part of China. China itself, China's making the majority of all the most groundbreaking technology now. Even all your anime, and Japan, but these are all the United States and the West have been trying to control and maintain control and subjugate these places so that they can dominate the tech world. What is done with the tech that is made by their subservient Asians, right? And this is so cyberpunk is actually about trying to engender a simultaneously, oh, that's really cool, but also be afraid of these also colonized or at least semi-colonized people. In the case of Korea, literally, it's about using them as cannon fodder, using them as cheap labor and then cannon fodder, right? Cheap labor for many products to make their Samsung, and then also as cannon fodder to go and try to stop the rise of a multipolar decolonizing world under Belt and Road Initiative, SCO, BRICS, etc. So so anyway, what I was saying was that like when we're talking about where we're going, right? I was like, well, the future is it would what makes a city a city? What makes a place, right? I mean, if we're talking about if the U.S. is not going to be the U.S., does that mean that means we're not going to have because some people say like you Native Hawaiians without Americans you would all be living in mud huts and you wouldn't have any roads. False, right? It's just straight up false. Before the United States illegally occupied Hawaii, we already had high speed. We had rail, we had mass transit, we had world class education system. I'm trying to find my thread there that you probably have seen, but in case you didn't, trying to find my thread. Why am I not able to find my thread today? Okay. Before the United States occupied Hawaii, Hawaii had the highest literacy rate in the world. We had no homelessness, virtually no homelessness. Electric lights before the White House, mass affordable transit, industrialization, virtually no, full racial equality. After the coup, all this statistics reversed. So like when people say like, oh, to not be American means to live in the dirt. To not be American means to be, what that is though. That is about to not be Western, to not be civilized, to not be part of Europe, or to not be part of the colonizer world, right? If you're not part of the ball of capitalist colonial genocidal vampires, then you live in a hut, right? You're a backward African, right? This is why Leopold II could kill 20 million Africans, and Hitler can kill less than half of that of white people, but you only remember the Hitler. You don't even recall the Leopold II, except when non-white global majority people bring it up for the most part, right? Is because to be and also it's also if you aren't becoming like us, and you never can fully you can never fully become like us. You will always be second class citizens. But even if the best you can do is like try to be more like us. You can be subservient to us, as the good Asians like in South Korea. You can be the good Asians like in Hong Kong, carrying white people on their back. You can be the good Asians like Japan, right? And then white nerds like No Opinion and Elon Musk will have mail order Japanese wives wearing literal adult women wearing schoolgirl outfits and be their sex slaves, right? And that's why anime and Korean stuff, K-pop and anime, Japanese and Korean stuff can all be cool, but then when it's Chinese, it has to be bad. It's because they're the good subservient in-house Asian slaves, and then the Africans are the impoverished, those are the outhouse slaves, but the having the resources all plundered. But you can make some products for us in China or somewhere around the world, and as long as you let us own all the wealth, if you only make Tesla, if you only make Walmart products, and you let us keep the majority of the wealth from all the labor that you do, then you're the good Asians. But that's or the good non-white people. But if you try to build, that's why the United States illegally occupied Hawaii, is because we were an anti-imperial socialist path country, anti-racist country that actually had racial equality. Full black and Asian citizens in the 1700s, when the U.S. was still run, and all of the collective West was just run by outright slave owners and pro-slavery. The president of Princeton owned a black slave who became a teacher, and she's founded Lahaina School in Hawaii. Did you know that? So Hawaii was actually what the U.S. and the West claims it to be, and that was why the United States occupied and destroyed it, because it had to crush the example of what being an actual civilized country means. Right? The West has never been civilized. Europeans and Americans, there's no morality at all. Right? What to be an actual human, moral, equal, human rights respecting, right, freedom upholding, justice having country. There's never been justice in the West. I mean, colonialism and capitalism, racism never ended, so there's never been justice in the West. Period. It's a joke. So this freedom and justice for all. It's the biggest nonsense I've ever heard. So the reality is that the United States, Americans are told, right, that to be civilized, even Hawaiians and non-white people and indigenous people are led to believe that to be indigenous, to be Hawaiian, to be African or something means to be underdeveloped. It means to be impoverished, right? It means to be like living in a mud hut. It means to be like, I'm not to say that like the way we live was bad, but we were not living in the way that people are often depicting. We're not living in abject poverty. Africans were not living, right, in starvation. That is an artificial construction by colonizers. Most advanced cities in the world, in most advanced civilizations in the world, before colonization were in Africa a long time ago. Right? These are some of the oldest civilizations. Right? And it's what the U.S. is doing to Cuba right now, which is to say embargoing it, sanctioning it, stopping it from getting access to any money. And then Cuba has had electrical blackouts. Is having big problems right now because the United States is starving it. And the U.S. says, you see, if you do a communism, you see, look at those filthy Cubans. Look at those stupid, filthy, authoritarian, communist Cubans. If they just did what America wanted, they would be living advanced, civilized lives. But the reality is that the United States constructed that. The colonizers construct this artificial, false idea of what it means to be a person of your indigenous non-white culture, and also that your socialist, communist, non-capitalist system, economic structures is what creates the poverty, right? When actually that's all backwards. And also, and of course, the West can never have an education system, because if it ever, the United States and Europeans ever learned the real truth at scale, right? I mean, I said, you can, just because you do journalism doesn't mean things will change. But if Europeans and Americans in the West learn that their lives could actually get better than it is, right? It could actually get better than they currently are if they adopted our economic system and all. If the United States and the Europeans and the Canadians, instead of, right, when they realized, right, the preconceptions about Hawaii were false, and they said the islands of Hawaii are ahead in literacy. The islands of Hawaii are ahead of Europe. The island of Hawaii has a better electrical technological infrastructure. Hawaii has a better mass transit system, right? If the Europeans if the masses of Europe and America realized it, and they actually changed, Americans' lives would get better, right? They could have hydropowered, they could have renewable powered, very cheap electricity, and quality transportation. They could have nice things. Like all of them could have this, right? But and of course, it's stuff they have to fight for it. But if they learn, but this is why you can never learn this truth in the United States or in the West. They will never teach you that. There's no college, there's no schools or high schools that will teach you about this, except maybe some random rogue professor accidentally, or rogue guerrilla teacher teaches you that. If the students' parents find out that you're teaching that, you could get fired because of anti-woke, policies in all U.S. schools now that basically say you can't teach things that make Americans, white people, uncomfortable in schools. It's illegal to teach that, basically. So it's illegal. It's straight up illegal to teach the truth in Western schools when it matters. So, but anyways, but I bring this up because to be Native Hawaiian does not mean to be underdeveloped, because we already were developed in this time, right? The thing is, you can have a developed country with buildings, but that also doesn't destroy the environment. We proved that. We had a zero fossil fuel powered city electrical grid. We had the ways to do it in the 1800s, right? We had enough food that was being grown sustainably to feed all Hawaiians without destroying our land, without leaching the soil, without causing mass desertification, degradation, and then things that caused the Lahaina fires. We already knew how to do that, and like there, China is greened, right? The United States and the West do not have a system that is capable of preserving the environment. Their system, their capitalist system, the corporate system that is part of the colonial system, the imperial system, blow up and burn everything and over extract resources, and the capitalist system wrecks their own, the nice place, the imperial core, right? Their first world is being destroyed. The Europeans, they do not have a system that has a future. They cannot but destroy themselves, their environments, their forests, their land. They cannot not do that. That's why people give up. I mean, Western climate scientists, environmentalists, people trying to make change, they just give up and they doom out because their system is incapable. But and they are too racist, Western exceptionalist, holding on. Again, they're like holding on. Hope maybe we can get our empire together. Maybe our ball of vampires can roll up the hill again. Maybe our Western white colonial capitalist system can get a little bit more democratic socialisty or something. And this is a false hope that is based upon your racist, colonialist, unexamined assumptions and lies that you have been told for many to keep you trapped in that matrix. And but the reality is that like there's already exist solutions to these problems, but those solutions do not exist in the Western world. They exist outside of it, and they exist before it, like Hawaii. They exist like the Arab world already had universal health. They other than Hawaii, like Arab world. The thing is, most indigenous communities they give health care because people need health. People who are sick need to be healed, and they just did that, right? That's what normal human civilizations do. That's not what the West has ever done. The Arab world and the Islam communities, what's called the Bamiristan system, which is a mandated Islam itself mandated food and health care and the needs of people to be met. Anyone, no matter their religion, Christian, Jewish, Muslim. And the Bamiristan system was a roving hospital system. By the way, the Arabs invented hospitals. Gaza comes from Gaza. And these systems would go, they would have doctors and health practitioners taking the gauze, and they had cataract treatments. They had all kind of medicines that they invented, vaccines, which they had centuries and centuries and thousands of years ago. And they would go around and heal people for free as part of their Muslim faith and as part of their system, right? They took pride in this. It was free healthcare for women, for men, any gender, any color, any religion, right? This was just that, and they were a very advanced civilization. This is actually the difference between the West and the East, the Greeks and the Romans. Everybody kind of like west of the Levant, because you have Palestine, you have Syria, right, and you have Turkey, and then right across that's where all the immigrants are being sunk by the Europeans into the bottom of the ocean and killed. But everybody like in Greece and then Rome and then back into Spain and then Britain and France later on, everybody west of there, they did not adhere to Jubilee debt forgiveness. They adhered to they built and they developed systems, lifeways, and economic and political structures, banking structures that privileged the wealth, oligarchy. They did not do debt forgiveness. They did perpetual wealth accrual, and they had supremacist organizations. Patriarchy never ended, and it was always strong in Greece, all the way into Rome, and then all the way into Britain, obviously. Women have always been second-class citizens there. Now they pretend to be feminists. They still are. Women are still treated as second-class citizens, even in the so-called democratic progressive parties, it's still hasn't really changed at all. It's still the old white man's club. And so, whereas in the Muslim faith, there's also women have always had the ability to, they actually, it was mandated in their book that said, like, you must, women can never be mistreated. They must have the ability to divorce husbands, leave abusive husbands, and have financial independence. I mean, there's all this stuff that's like, actually, it's just outright stated in their holy book. And in the Western Bible, the Western Bible is just a weapon of colonization that is full of imperial, capitalist, racist nonsense that has been layers upon layers of that added with each translation, from the Romans, their twisted Paul, to the British King James and other Bibles. Each retranslation in each Bible is just a more extreme things were added, like removing the "we forgive our debts and as we forgive our debtors," which is about stopping banker controlled plutocracy and oligarchy from creating a society of debt peonage and debt slavery. That's what that was about. And it turned into respect rich people's private property. That's actually just with that, taking that word debt and turning it into forgive our trespasses. It turned from anti-capitalist to pro-capitalist, just with that one example in one word in our Lord's Prayer. So there have been civilizations, right? Now, what's the difference between that civilization? Well, what makes the civilization good or not good? What makes it American or not American? We could say, well, like, we can have a MAGA communism, we can have patriot socialism, we can have America, we can have a just, equitable America, we can have kinder capitalism America. So one of the things is, like, most Westerners don't even know what words mean, period. Whether the words mean anything, the Western language itself is a broken nightmare, soaked in the blood of billions of people for centuries. So I don't even know what the hell these words mean. What is Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are both apparently communists. If you ask Democrats, they'll say, some of them will say Donald Trump is communist. Trump and the Republicans will say Kamala is communist Kamala. So what do words even mean? Most of the West don't even know what any of these words mean. So it's just kind of it's just an exercise in frustration sometimes. But if we're talking about, like, what makes a city what makes a place where people want to live? Now, obviously, right? What makes a place what makes the United States and not Anishinaabe, Lakota? What makes it not Native North America, and what makes it the United States? Right? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter too much. What matters is that how are the people treated, right? Is it apartheid like the U.S. and Europe supported Israel and on Palestine, or are people treated equally? I mean, what you ultimately call it is not really what ultimately matters. But but in the sense of, like, is it the U.S. the way that it has existed? So is it what it has been de facto, like in fact, which is to say, a settler colony with people under a liberal and conservative duopoly, capitalist structure, where the rich control and dominate everything? And will it have this endemic racist characteristic to itself? What kind of music will people listen to? What kind of art will people watch? What in that kind of sense? I mean, who knows? But I think that, like, I do think that it's there will not be a United States as an empire. It simply is falling apart. It's going to be it's collapsing. There will not be a United States as a capitalistic, imperialistic structure, right? Kind of the empire and the capitalism kind of come. They're not the same, but they come together. And the colonialism, the capitalism, and imperialism, they're synergistic, right? Without the plunder to maintain, without the global plunder to basically bribe off and diseducate the masses, like the occupation of Hawaii, the occupation of Korea, all these occupations will start to fall apart. And the United States' ability to brainwash its own population will also start to flounder. Like, this is actually what happened in China. There was a very powerful comprador, basically colonial allied interest in the coast of China, right? This is part of why the Sun Yat-sen and the leaders of the revolution, there's multiple, like, revolutionary, like, surges there. There's Sun Yat-sen, Mao Zedong, but there was the country was largely kept impoverished, and it was led from these pro-colonial places like Hong Kong, at Shanghai, at Taiwan. It was multiple, the whole colonial system, which they always work together ultimately, were working together to subjugate and control China through these kind of corrupt leaders, right, and corrupt entities. And the mainland, which is where the organizing was happening against this, right, to a large extent, and also in Hawaii. Hawaii is actually where the forerunner to the Chinese ultimate revolution in the 1940s was from Hawaii. It was inspired by Hawaii, and brought that, and was funded operations from Hawaii actually in the Tongmeng Hui and the Sing Shang Hui. This is where Dr. Sun Yat-sen, went to a school, one of the greatest. Sun Yat-sen went to the most advanced civilization on earth. It was the Hawaiian socialist civilization, and then he brought that idea to China, and that's what they have now, basically. And the so the the as the revolutionary path continued, and the wealthy Hong Kong, Shanghai, Taiwan elites, the ROK, it's a long history. I can't go through all of it right now, but as they lost power and they were overthrown, as the landlords, right, and the wealthy elites who are complicit and collaborating with the people who are now Falun Gong, these creeps that do push anti-China imperial propaganda through the United States. These are the descendants of the wealthy colonial collaborators. Some of them Chinese, half British. Usually they were educated in a London or in a Paris or in a New York or somewhere like that, or Washington. They go to Harvard now. But these descendants, these like liberalized, westernized Chinese along the coast, they lost power. They retreated in the Mao's revolution. They were forced out of China. They were forced out of the mainland into Taiwan. Right? The Republic of China is the main U.S. backed force. They were forced out in the revolution into Taiwan. And then the West was, oh my God, who lost China? As if it was theirs, right? So after that, now China did not become not China, but the cities didn't suddenly overnight, oh my God, now it's all communism and everything is completely different. They're still Chinese people. The flags changed. The quality of life of people in China. Now, of course, it was hard because the collective colonial capitalist world tried to starve them out, cut them off from international trade and finance, blah, blah, blah. And that was very hard. But over time, if you go to the capital, it's different flags. The development rate changed. It was a bit tough because, there was a global capitalist colonial hegemonic structure, U.S. empire. U.S. empire that's adds in all the collective West and all these collaborator vassals, right? But so China was fighting against that, and but here's something else that changed. As Mao said, let women hold up half the sky. The patriarchal elements of Confucianism were shifted because that predated the Western colonialism in China, and they said we have to have more equality and relationships and economic concrete changes so that women are not treated as lesser. And women need to have their own land, their own space, their own and they should have economic equality and also social and political equality to men, right? And that was part of the changes. China was plagued with, I guess, mass drug usage. That was part of colonial subjugation, but keeping everyone on opium, right, and narcotics, so mass public exercise spaces. Part of it was about encouraging people to get healthy by exercising, but it's also about publicly showing, because a lot of people were like their dads or uncles were like languishing on opium in the house, right? Just like they were like rotting away. It's actually how William Burroughs died, American writer, rotting away on heroin, right? And so So it was about like, getting healthy, participating in physical exercise, getting, because it's hard to do heroin when you're out in the middle of the park, right, doing the uneven bars or doing tai chi, right? So part of it was about like being like, we are collectively going to get off of, we're gonna fight together to get off of these drugs. We're gonna get healthy. We're gonna get physically healthy, right? And then the United States, and as I said previously, right, then the West, the U.S. lost all of its narco trafficking from Afghanistan. They go into Triangle and they dumped it into America. Then that's why everyone started doing drugs in the 60s, because we have to narco traffic into our own hippie children and our own, especially the left and black radicals who are now becoming Maoists because of the success there. We got to narco traffic into them to drug them off and then mass incarcerate them, right? So the West, and the fentanyl is just to continue narco trafficking into the American body after it lost ability to narco traffic into Asian bodies. And they got very strict about that, and they still are in China and Vietnam and places like that. So, but that was part of the changes. So Americans will be doing less drugs. The thing is, young people are already doing less drugs because they can't fucking afford it. But I mean, even still, there's still a large drug problem. There's a lot of fentanyl problems. There's this opioid crisis. There's many drug problems. All these drugs are from not just the criminal drugs. The U.S. medical system is a criminal enterprise. It's organized crime. That's what U.S. quote unquote healthcare is. Universal death care and universal narco trafficking into your own body. So there will be people doing less drugs. The flags will be different in the United States after it loses its capitalist, colonialist, racist qualities. It's narco trafficking, drug dealing, organized crime. America as an organized crime, planetary crime dealing, bribery, mass theft and plunder operation, and mass murder operation will cease. So America is heading to less people in the military. Or if they join the military, the U.S. military will be dedicated, like the PLA, mostly to actually stopping people from dying in disasters, right? American military were begging in North Carolina. They were actually begging, soldiers were begging to go to help family members and community members in North Carolina, in Asheville. The U.S. military said, no, you have to be prepared to go and deploy into Israel to kill Lebanese and Palestinians. And that's what America has done. American soldiers are going to kill Lebanese and Palestinians right now. They have been, and they're still doing that. Horrible. So if you're in the U.S. military, if you want to die supporting billionaires and genocide, I go join the U.S. military, any Western military. But anyway, so there will be less people doing that. There will be less people, doing drugs. There will be more people doing different activities. There will be many more activities to do that will actually be a benefit to the society. Will there still be white people the way that they are today? I mean, there's people not going to change color. Land back doesn't mean, obviously you can't, I'm one native person, but land back doesn't mean all the people that are of certain Caucasoid DNA or skin color. We're not going to hold you up like the Family Guy meme next to a piece of printer paper and a chai latte and like a chocolate bar and say, okay, which color are you? And then send you back to Europe based upon your skin color. Man, that's not what's going to happen, right? In the same way that if Palestine is restored, everyone who is of white enough color or too Jewish, they all got to get kicked out of Palestine. If Palestine is restored, then Palestinians, Jewish, Palestinians and non-Palestinians, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim people will coexist as they did before the Western, U.S., European, or British, especially British, created it, Zionist project. It just go back to equality. And land back for what the United States was like that, right? That's actually what it means. Now it's kind of like the word is a bit I shouldn't say that is what it means. I'm one native person. I can't speak for all of the people, but for Hawaii, it just means like we would like Hawaii we want it to be governed the way that we had governed it previously, and not as an imperial settler colony under a racist apartheid system in which we are second-class citizens in our own land. are systematically denied our ability to even act, to teach, to speak our own languages, teach our children our own languages, to have basic rights, and to and we definitely don't want to be governed under this capitalist imperialist system of the U.S. illegal occupation, which the U.S. and the UN have already admitted. Bill Clinton even signed an apology. Sorry, we occupied you, genocided you, banned your language, your culture, stole your land, destroyed your advanced socialist system, universal healthcare, universal high quality transportation. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Signed Bill Clinton. But we're going to do nothing. So that's the again, the Republican is like, not sorry, we're going to screw you over. And the liberal is like, I'm so sorry we screwed you over, I want to keep screwing you over. That's the difference between Bill Clinton. That's what Kamala Harris just said. We support our indigenous people on Indigenous Peoples Day. Okay, let's kill all the indigenous people in Palestine. And then Trump was like, Indigenous Peoples Day, rename it Columbus Day. Okay, kill all indigenous people in Palestine. The funny thing is actually Trump is less genocidal in some ways than the Republicans are nowadays. Actually, they're like, well, let's not do all the genocide. Let's just do some genocide. Let's focus. Let's make America great again and do less total global genocide. So it's like, and not that they're good, but they're just like, the Democrats seem to be more, they want to like max genocide, and then the Republicans are like, let's spend some money like building a few stuff. Let's build like 2 bridges, and then we go back to the genocide. So it's already 2. I gotta go. Anyways, where is the U.S. headed? So I think that's where it's at. I think it's things are gonna change, and things are gonna get worse. If you get a P100, especially if you're around chemical plants, don't think you can run away from climate change. You can't. The United States is dollar hegemony is going to run out. BRICS repayment system is happening. Everyone's de-dollarizing. I think that McDonald's and Starbucks, there will be coffee stops, but there will be like Yemenis and Palestinian coffee shops. Nobody's going to go to Starbucks anymore. That's what's going to change. There won't be McDonald's. There won't be Starbucks. There won't be Domino's. There won't be a Soda Stream. Walmart might be gone. Probably will be gone. The name Walmart. Coffee is coffee. You don't need Starbucks, right? But the Starbucks Corporation, the billionaire Schultz, who is also a Zionist that supports that. Right? OpenAI will be gone. Facebook will be gone. Instagram, Twitter will be gone. They don't have to. You'll still have social media. It just won't be those specifically. Giant capitalist corporations run by Zionist, genocidal, imperialist, billionaire white people like Mark Zuckerberg. But you'll still have it's not, we don't have specifically Weibo. You won't have Douyin specifically. You won't have Chinese. You won't have Huawei phone necessarily. But you might, right? Until you can get your act together and make your own. North American Federation of Indigenous Peoples. Until you get Lakota phone, until you can go onto like Turtle Island book instead of Facebook, you might have to use Douyin. Until you can get onto Turtle Island coffee. I'm not saying, I don't know what it is, right? But it's probably not gonna be I think it's probably not gonna be Starbucks. Those things they're too baked into the genocide to exist. The American flag, people might just choose to be like, you know what? We don't want to fly this American flag anymore. This American, it's kind of like people don't want to fly Israeli flag anymore, right? It's like people don't want to fly Nazi flag. Germany could keep flying the Nazi flag, but like, we don't want to try to rehabilitate that flag. You could try. Germany could try to say, well, the swastika doesn't really represent Hitler and mass killing and genocide, right? In the same way that like, but the thing is, if America's reputation is truly known, it's worse than Germany, Nazi Germany, right? If Europeans' reputation is truly known and it comes to light who they really are, they might want to burn all their flags. It's not just Hananike Trash and Native people and black activists be like, we're gonna burn American flags, right? And a handful of like radical Vietnam War vets be like, I'll burn that American flag. Americans might just say like, you know what, fuck this flag, man. This flag represents. I don't want to be associated with it. It might be economically untenable to be associated with the American flag at all, right? What if the world's consumer? What if you've put an American flag next to your product? 90% of the middle class Chinese, billions of Africans and Chinese don't want to buy your product because you put American flag on it. You can't you there might be a day where you cannot even sell a game, a coffee, a hamburger, or a car or a phone, right? If you put an American or a European flag next to that thing. If you say made in America, oh my god, I'm not touching that genocide imperialist crap. You have to put a Native American flag. You have to put a Palestinian, Yemenis, or something else. You just don't put that there, right? And then people will abandon because the reputation of the white Western colonial world will be known, and it would take like impossible amounts of effort that is not even worth it to try to rebrand the American flag, the British flag, the French flag, the European flag, the Canadian flag, the Israeli flag, the Australian flag, right? The same way, who wants to try to rebrand the swastika? Who wants to try to rebrand that? Why would you even want to do that? You'd have to be kind of like a weird, deranged, probably like, are you closet Nazi? You know, people go like, are you like a crypto fascist, right? People like, are you like a crypto American? Not selling crypto coins. Are you like pretending to? Are you an actual American? That you believe in the United States of America and imperialism, and genocide and racism and capitalism, which is what it represents. Why would you want to try to rebrand that flag, right? I think that day. I'm not saying that's what will happen, but you know, and there will still be houses, there will be trees, there will be more spice in food because guess what? White cooking fucking sucks. I'm sorry. Who wants to eat the lunch of sadness and a cold carrot and a cold broccoli? I'm sorry. Like, you got to discover food. I'm sorry. Go to Mexico, go to Asia, go to Africa. That the cooking will be different in North America and in Europe. And that's going to be really great. So things will taste better. It'll be more colorful. There'll be many corporations and maybe even the flag itself will be gone. People will speak different languages and not feel bad about speaking different languages. And people can still speak English, you know. But then if somebody speaks Spanish, it's not gonna be bad or weird. If somebody speaks Lakota, you know, if you're in an international, you know, like in China, Mandarin is actually the language that all the different ethnic regions speak, and they also have their own local ancient dialect. They have their own local ancient language. Everyone is bilingual. So the United States is headed towards a future where most or everyone will be bilingual wherever they come from, and people won't judge you because well, you use the wrong grammar on that. Well, fuck your grammar. Your spelling and your grammar is all bullshit in English anyway. All your words are Frankenstein together from all the places you colonized, right, and stole from. Your Britain itself is just a Frankenstein monster made up of Roman imperial refuse and the dead bodies of countless the dead cultures that you have all crushed and stolen from, right? American music is just like black and brown people's music. You just stole. I mean, none of your stuff is authentic. It doesn't deserve some kind of heightened respect against other cultures. Your music, your language, your art, your culture, Western things, white, American, European things, they're just another thing in the world. And in fact, people will be suspicious, and they should be suspicious. And there won't be any money to force people to like Elon Musk or Western white rich people, right? Because Elon has to pay money to get 10%. For Elon to get even 100, a handful of likes, he has to like pay robots to fucking like him. When the West runs out of, like, Elon is a microcosm. When the West runs out of money to pay everyone else to like them, nobody's gonna like them, and they'll have to. So I think people will just be like, oh, I give up already, right? When the money runs out for South Korea, when the money runs out to pay people to like him, right? Like, and as a microcosm, if Elon didn't have any money, nobody would be his friend. Nobody would be liking his shit on Twitter. Nobody would be like, oh my God, you're such a genius. At PayPal, they gave Elon a separate computer where he could pretend that he typed codes, but the code that he typed, because it was absolute garbage that crashed the system and it was nonsense, he was a complete like sub-preschool moron. Elon was given a separate computer to type into just so that he wouldn't break the system, but he could feel like he was coding, right? But if Elon didn't have money, he could not run PayPal, run Twitter, and also have people clapping for him, right? The United States and Europe will be like Elon. Nobody's going to be clapping for America. The South Koreans and Japanese, oh, it's such a good job you did. No, everyone can actually say what they actually think, which is, fuck that entire colonizer fucking project. Nobody's gonna fly that. Why would I fly your swastika now? I only flew your swastika in Taiwan, in Japan, in my fucking sell out Arab country. And we're not run by your MBS and your Jordan King anymore. Why would I fly your American flag? Why would I clap for you? I'm not taking billions of dollars from you. I'm not. You don't have 50 million to give anyone. I'm with BRICS now. We're in the multipolar New Silk Road time. Nobody's gonna, So when that happens, the West is full of incompetent white guys. That's who runs everything, and nobody is gonna buy their shit, and they're gonna get sad, and many of them will kill themselves, and most people won't care, and that's too bad. And then the children of these Western white people will get good at something, and they'll just join. Maybe like, fuck, I don't want to be white anymore. It's gonna be a slightly lighter member of the Dakota Nation, and my children will be indigenous. I'm not going to be white anymore. I don't want to be related to this British aristocracy. Western men are not getting dates anyway. 70% of them will never reproduce, and nobody cares. Nobody's going to raise their kids. I'm going to date African or an Arab, and my children will be like Arab people in North Africa. That's now known. Britain will now be known as that North Africa, West Asia. So I'm a descendant of. I'm a descendant of Nigerians in North Africa. That's now called the Northern Island of Africa. We'll come up with some other name. And like, I don't want to be British anymore, because if I call myself British, nobody will play my video game or talk to me on the social media. So I mean, people will willingly quit being Western, because everybody had to be paid or held a gun, forced to be Western. But they have nothing that's really beneficial to the world to give, and everything, the legacy is horrible. So anyways, that's my personal opinion, though. Maybe I'll be completely wrong. That's totally possible. But anyways, if you would like to support if you would like to support this continued colonial decolonial education and anti-capitalist information, you can give us support at ko-fi.com/silverspook. You can also help us out at patreon.com/neofeud. And yeah, on patreon.com you can give us support. Help us do our own decolonization here in U.S. illegally occupied Hawaii by continuing to build out our land back, agriculture, sustainable practices, including growing medicine and food in the continued U.S. illegal occupation of Hawaii. Also, you can help us out to finish Neofeud 2. I'm very close to being done. I'm just on the last scene of the ending of. I finished the game. I'm on the last scene of the ending of Neofeud 2. Once that's done, I'm gonna gather together the script of Neofeud 2, and then I'm gonna send out the script. I'm gonna send out the casting call, and so we'll need voice actors for that. So if you've been waiting for me to put out the casting call, good news is I'm very close to being done. I'm still trying to get Neofeud 2 done this year. I still need voice acting, sound effects, music, and the testing the game. So I don't know how long that's gonna take. If it goes very fast, it will be done possibly by the end of the year, but we'll see. But anyway, so that's Neofeud 2. Yeah. So if you want to help us out, consider becoming a Patreon supporter. You can also give us ongoing support, and when you give us ongoing Patreon support, you can get access to the Silverspook Discord. Obviously, these behind the scenes of what we're working on, as well as access to Silverspook University, which is, as I said earlier, over 1,000 hours of all the content we have produced, categorized according to topic. No genocide is involved in this. Tuition is $94,000 times cheaper than Pennsylvania State, which is $94,000 a year. So yes, at any Patreon level, you can get access to that. You can also get Neofeud. Oh, don't forget, Neofeud is on sale. If you have been waiting to get Neofeud, you can get it now, which is on sale on Steam. And yeah, so don't forget to grab Neofeud. Neofeud is an anti-capitalist, anti-colonial cyberpunk adventure game that I spent 2.5 years doing the writing, art, programming, music, and half of the voice acting on. And Neofeud is also a game that supports everything that we do here. We're a cyber social worker, a ex-con robot, and a ex-trillionaire, ex-princess joined together to try to stop a levitating, floating palaces full of gajillionaires with the John Connor lookalikes, hippie Terminators, unplugged Matrix agents, killer Sega Genesis shaped power meters, and lots of other hijinks that will be referencing many things. It's very, I guess it's kind of millennial core. Is that a genre now? I don't know. If you were born in the 80s, you will get a lot of the jokes. If you weren't, you can still get a lot of the references and jokes, but it is very much a game that's about all of that. And also, you can get, if you get Neofeud and you like it, don't forget, if you can leave even a very short review, can help us get the game discovered in the Steam algorithm. So don't forget to do that. You can also get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux on itch.io, and give us the maximum revenue. You can also get Decolonators, Pigeon with Gun, and several other games. And Woman is a book by Holly, who was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and it's not meant to be a historical retelling, but a work of fiction that is Mary's perspective from the Bible, and it's also free, or you can donate some money when you pick it up. You can also support us you can follow at Silverspoon Games at wandering.shop and or at Silverspoon Games at Mastodon.social. Everyone's leaving Twitter now, so I shouldn't say that. Some people are leaving Twitter now because they're mad at Elon, and he's talking about ending the block button, and that guy sucks, man. I wish he wasn't in charge of that social media platform. But you can follow us at Blue Sky if you want. silverspookgames.bsky.social. You can also follow us on Twitter though at Silverspook. Where did my thing go? You can follow at Silverspook Guy on Twitter, at Silverspook Games minus the E and Silver for the games related stuff. Terminus C is the account for Terminus Cyberstar, which is Terminus C is the sequel. Somebody asked me about Terminus Machina earlier. So to answer that question, Terminus Cyberstar is a sequel to Terminus Machina, and you can get this. You can follow it here on Terminus C, and of course you can follow Holly at the Tech at Allergic to Blue, writer producer here, married to myself, parent of two, linebacker free white MECFS Saver. Please protect your community by wearing masks, because guess what? We are still inside of ongoing mass illness events. So please mask up. Yeah. And thanks everybody for watching. Thanks Patreon supporters for your Patreon. Patreon is massively appreciated. Without your support, it's hard for us to keep doing this work. And keep your marriage spots to be excellent to each other. I think the message I want to get is that it's gonna be a lot of soul searching, and a lot of there's gonna be difficulties, but there is a bright future on the other side. It will involve facing some internal beliefs and nonsense, and there will be some personal sacrifice, but there will be a positive future on the other side of this U.S. or quote unquote U.S. or so-called U.S.